Hey guys, today I'm working on this late 944 and as you can see the fuel gauge doesn't work, so if you're also having this issue I'm going to show you how to repair it. So alright guys, the first thing I'm going to do is get this hatch carpet out of the way, and if you have an earlier car then I've already made a video on this process and I'll put a link on the screen to that video right now. So let me get this carpet out. And again, you're just going to flip this piece of fiberglass matting up, and then you're going to see your fuel sender down in there. So as you can see, this is set up differently than the early cars. You have two hoses here that the early cars don't have. You have a plug here instead of 3 wires, and instead of bolts going around the outside, you've actually got a cap that unscrews. So in order to remove this cap, all you need to do is unscrew it, but first you must remove these two hoses here and get those pushed back out of the way. So that's what I'm going to do here. So once the hoses are out of the way, I like to use an oil filter wrench and then put it on the cap. Once you have the cap unscrewed, it just lifts out like that. So here's what the late sender looks like. You can see it looks quite different than the earlier one. It has this piece here on the bottom, and then you have this screw-on cap and it just comes off like that. Then you have where the two hoses connect on top, and also a plug instead of the 3 wires that plug in with spade terminals. But anyway, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and remove this here. You can see that there is a little nut there. You can use a 732 or a 5.5 millimeter to remove it. Either one's fine. And they're not usually on there very tight, so I just use this tool here. And you don't have to make a tool like you do with the earlier ones. And once you remove the nut and the washer, then this plastic comes off here. And you can just set it aside. Next, you're going to have a black cap. And notice how you have this tube coming through it. And then you're going to have another 5.5 millimeter nut. And then you're just going to go ahead and unscrew that as well. And there's that nut. Then you just gently remove the black piece here and you slide it off this shaft here and this tube. I'll set that here. And then next you're going to go ahead and remove this aluminum tube like that. So alright, basically what happens here is that you have this float that slides along this shaft, and you can see that you have these 2 wires here and they are connected to this float, and as you slide this back and forth you're supposed to get different resistance values, but over time what happens is fuel varnish builds up on these tiny wires and then you don't get a connection at all, and then your gauge doesn't work anymore. So what we're going to do here is take some carb cleaner. And we're going to spray these wires off really good, and make sure that you spray the contacts that are actually on the float as well. And you can see that there are 2 contacts down here. Those contacts are for the fuel light, so you want to make sure you spray those off as well. Once you do that, then you just want to take the float and gently work it back and forth. These wires are very thin and they can break, so you just want to take it easy, but you want to go up and down like that for a few minutes, and that should remove all the varnish. So once you've got it sprayed off and you've worked all the varnish off there, then what you can do is just go back out to your car and plug it back in. You want to make sure that you have the fuel tank covered here. You want to be very careful around fuel. And then just take the float and move it back and forth and watch your fuel gauge to make sure everything is working properly. And once you're happy with the results, then you can go ahead and unplug it, and then you're ready to put it back together. Now, if it didn't work properly, then it could be the fuel gauge itself, and I'll try and make a video on how to repair that soon. So now that this is working properly, the only thing left to do is reassemble it. So I'm going to take this aluminum tube here and I'm going to slide it on, but you want to make sure that you line this notch up with the notch that's down in here. And it's just going to go together like that. Then you're going to take this black piece here and you want to make sure that you put this hole where that tube is, and you're going to also slide it onto that threaded shaft. Once both of those are lined up, then you're just going to push them together like that. And then you're also going to have a notch on this cap that needs to line up with this aluminum tube. And that's it. Once it's all lined up, all you need to do is go ahead and put one of your little nuts back on. Doesn't have to be super tight, but you want it good and snug. So alright, once you have it assembled, you want to move this up and down to make sure that you hear the float moving around. If the float isn't moving around freely, then you might have your notches off, and that's going to cause it to bind inside. So once that's done, the only thing left to do really is put this back on. But before you do so, you may want to go ahead and replace this seal, because once this is on, you can't get it back on there. There's also a seal that belongs right here that is missing on mine, but that's fine. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes today. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the part numbers on the screen right now, so that way you guys can order those and get those put on. And now I'm just going to put this back on. As you can see, there's a notch down there in the bottom, and it's going to line up with this notch right here. And when you have it inserted properly, then you won't be able to turn this. And then you can take your washer and your nut and put them back on. And once you have that snug down, you're done. So alright, once you have it reassembled, what you're going to do is take it and put it back down in there. Again, you want to make sure you have these two hoses out of the way, because if it goes in crooked, then you won't get it seated in there. You can see how it doesn't want to go. So you got to make sure it goes straight in. Once you have it straight in, then you can go ahead and start screwing your cap back on. And that's about as tight as it's gonna go. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the hoses back on here. you have your hoses back on and the clamps tightened down, and you're ready to plug it back in, and you're all done. Alright, I now have a working fuel gauge in this car, and hopefully that's helped you solve your issue. And if you like the content on this channel, be sure to like and subscribe. I try and put out new videos every week. Also, come join us on Facebook. I put out original content over there as well. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.